There comes a moment in every life where words fail, where explanations crumble beneath the weight of reality, and the only thing left to do is let go. It's not an act of defeat, but of profound courage, an acknowledgement that not every goodbye needs to be spoken. Not every chapter demands a closing line. When you let go without saying goodbye, you step into a paradox of power and vulnerability, a space where growth begins and healing finds its way to you. It's an act of trust in yourself and the process of life. It means releasing the chains of resentment and regret, knowing that carrying their weight will only hold you back. It means choosing dignity over despair, wisdom over the need to explain, and freedom over the illusion of control. This choice is not easy. It demands you confront the fears that bind you to the past and the comfort of familiar pain. But in this act of letting go, you become something extraordinary, a person willing to rise above the noise, to embrace the silence, and to forge a new path forward. Because life does not wait for you to find the perfect ending. It thrives in your willingness to create a new beginning. There is a profound power in letting go, a silent strength that speaks louder than words, more resilient than the most eloquent goodbye. When you release someone or something without the closure you think you need, you are not surrendering to chaos. You are stepping into the realm of the truly courageous. For what could require more bravery than trusting in the unseen, believing that the absence of an ending is not a failure? He was called to leave his homeland, his father's house, and everything familiar to journey toward a promise he could not yet see. There was no farewell parade, no long explanation to those he left behind, only a quiet obedience to a higher call. That story isn't just a historical account. It's a blueprint for the human spirit. Sometimes we are asked to let go without answers, without goodbyes, and without knowing what comes next. And in doing so, we prove that our faith is stronger than our need for control. Letting go silently is not an act of weakness. It is the ultimate declaration of strength. It's an acknowledgement that closure is not always something external. It is an internal process. You see, closure doesn't come from the words spoken in a final conversation or the tears shed in a last embrace. True closure is born when you decide deep within yourself to release the weight of what no longer serves you. And make no mistake, this is not an easy task. The human heart craves resolution. It yearns for the neatness of tied-up endings. But life is seldom tidy, and it is in the chaos of uncertainty that we learn to grow. Consider the seasons. When autumn ends, the leaves fall, and the trees stand bare, there is no grand farewell. Yet the tree doesn't mourn its leaves. It lets them go, trusting that spring will bring renewal. That is the kind of faith we are called to embody. To understand that letting go is not an act of abandonment, but of transformation. What you release may fall away for a season, but the growth that follows will be immeasurable. The silent act of letting go also challenges the ego. The ego screams for recognition, for justification, for validation from those we leave behind. It wants to explain itself to make sure the story ends in its favor. But when you resist the urge to explain, you strip the ego of its power and step into a place of humility and grace. And it is in humility that you find your greatest strength, for it allows you to act with wisdom rather than reaction. Think about the relationships you've held on to too long, the jobs you've stayed in out of fear, the habits you've clung to because they felt safe. Every one of these is a weight, a tether that keeps you grounded in the past when you are meant to soar into the future. By letting go, you reclaim the energy you've been pouring into these attachments, and you redirect it toward building a life that aligns with your highest purpose. Jesus himself spoke of this principle when he said, "Let the dead bury their own dead." It is a stark and unsettling statement, but its truth cannot be denied. There comes a time when clinging to what is gone only drags you down into despair. You must walk forward not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. And in doing so, you not only free yourself, but also honor the sanctity of the path you were created to walk. Every time you let go silently, you declare to the universe that you trust in the unfolding of life. You say, "I will not be defined by what I leave behind, but by what I step into." And that trust, that faith, will carry you further than any goodbye ever could. For what you are building is not just an ending, but a beginning, an opening to a life of untold possibilities, a testament to the quiet, indomitable strength of the human spirit. Loss is an inescapable part of the human experience, but it holds within it an often overlooked truth. Loss is not the end. It is the fertile soil in which opportunity takes root. Transformation is born not in the comfort of what is known, but in the breaking, the releasing, and the stepping away from what no longer serves our growth. To let go is to accept the pain of loss while daring to believe that something greater lies on the other side. This is not a passive act, but one of profound courage. The human spirit is uniquely equipped to extract meaning from adversity. In the story of Job, we see a man stripped of everything, his wealth, his family, his health. And yet within the ashes of his suffering, he finds a deeper understanding of his place in creation. Job's restoration is not merely a return to what he once had. It is a transformation into someone who has seen the depths of despair and emerged with a faith unshaken. Similarly, when you release what you thought you couldn't live without, you make space for a greater purpose to unfold. But what does it mean to transform loss into opportunity? It begins with a radical shift in perspective. Instead of viewing loss as a punishment or failure, see it as a divine invitation to grow. When a door closes, it is not always rejection, it is often redirection. The relationships that dissolve, the dreams that falter, the plans that crumble, each is a signal pointing you towards something you would never have considered had you not been forced to let go. This shift requires a deliberate act of faith. Faith not in the sense of blind optimism, but in the conviction that life is not random. There is a profound order woven into the fabric of existence, even if it is beyond your current understanding. Consider the pruning of a vine. The gardener cuts away the dead branches not out of cruelty, but to encourage new growth. The vine does not resist the pruning, for it is through this process that it becomes stronger, more fruitful. You are no different. What you lose is often what you must release for your true potential to emerge. Transformation also demands action. It is not enough to simply wait for opportunity to present itself. You must seek it, pursue it, and sometimes create it from the fragments of what remains. Joseph, sold into slavery by his own brothers, could have resigned himself to despair. But instead, he chose to rise within his circumstances. As a servant, as a prisoner, and finally as a ruler, he demonstrated that even the greatest losses can be a foundation for unimaginable success. This principle applies to every facet of life. Perhaps you've lost a job you depended on, a relationship you cherished, or a vision of the future you clung to. Each loss is a call to reevaluate, to ask yourself, what am I capable of building now that I have nothing holding me back? The answer is always more than you imagine. Loss, when embraced with the right mindset, becomes a crucible that refines you, stripping away the unnecessary and revealing your true strength. But let us not trivialize the pain of loss. The process of transformation is not without its cost. The Israelites, wandering in the wilderness for 40 years, did not find their promised land without struggle. They faced hunger, doubt, and fear. Yet, it was in the wilderness that they were forged into a nation. Likewise, your journey through loss will test you, but it will also prepare you for the blessings ahead. Loss strips away the illusion of permanence, reminding us that all things are temporary. But within that truth lies a liberating freedom. When you stop clinging to what was, you open your hands to receive what is coming. It is in that act of letting go that opportunity emerges, not as a consolation prize, but as the very purpose for which you were created. This is not merely resilience, it is the triumph of the human spirit over the trials of life. It is the ability to rise, to rebuild, and to transform, not despite loss, but because of it. Emotional dependence is a subtle thief, robbing you of your freedom while whispering promises of comfort and security. It chains you to the approval of others, to the fear of abandonment, to the fragile hope that someone else will fill the void within you. Yet, as long as you depend on others for your sense of worth, you remain bound. Your potential stifled, your growth stalled, your peace always at the mercy of someone else's choices. Breaking these chains is not just an act of liberation, it is an act of reclaiming your identity, your purpose, and your power. Scripture reminds us of the dangers of misplaced reliance. In Jeremiah, we are told, accursed is the one who trusts in man, who draws strength from mere flesh and whose heart turns away from the Lord. This is not a condemnation of relationships, but a warning against building your foundation on something as fleeting as human approval. To tether your sense of self to another person is to anchor yourself to shifting sands where stability is impossible and true freedom remains out of reach. The journey to breaking these chains begins with self-awareness. You must confront the uncomfortable truth that your dependence on others is not a reflection of love, but of fear of rejection, fear of inadequacy, fear of being alone. These fears are not unique. They are universal, deeply ingrained in the human condition. But they are also lies, insidious and crippling, meant to keep you small. To break free, you must challenge these lies head on, replacing them with truths rooted in the unshakable value of who you are. Your worth is not determined by how others see you. It is not defined by the relationships you maintain, the roles you play, or the expectations you meet. Your worth is intrinsic, placed within you by the Creator who formed you in His image. To believe otherwise is to diminish yourself, to live as less than you were created to be. When you understand this truth, not just intellectually, but in the deepest core of your being, you begin to release the hold that emotional dependence has over you. Breaking these chains also requires the courage to set boundaries. Boundaries are not walls that shut others out. They are guardrails that protect your integrity. They allow you to love others without losing yourself, to give without being emptied, to support without being consumed. Jesus himself modeled this perfectly. He withdrew from the crowds to pray. He rested when he needed to, and he spoke hard truths even when they were unwelcome. He loved deeply, but he did not allow the demands of others to dictate his mission. Real freedom comes when you shift your focus inward, taking responsibility for your own happiness, your own growth, and your own healing. This is not selfishness. It is maturity. It is understanding that no one else can fill the void within you, because that void was never meant to be filled by another person. It is a space reserved for your relationship with God and with yourself. When you nurture that relationship, you find a strength that no one can take away. This freedom is not an escape from love, but a return to its true essence. Love that is born from dependence is not love. It is need. True love is given freely, without expectation, without manipulation, without fear. It is a reflection of the divine, a choice made in strength rather than desperation. When you break free from emotional dependence, you open yourself to this kind of love. The love that builds, uplifts, and transforms rather than drains and diminishes. The path is not easy. It requires you to face your fears, to sit with your pain, to unravel the patterns you've clung to for so long. But as you do, you will discover a freedom that is worth every tear, every struggle, every moment of discomfort. You will become the person you were always meant to be, strong, whole, and unshaken by the storms of life. And in that freedom, you will find a peace that surpasses understanding, a joy that no one can take from you, and a love that is both unbreakable and eternal. Silence possesses a depth that words cannot touch. In the stillness where noise falls away and the soul is laid bare, there is a power unlike any other. Silence is not merely the absence of sound. It is a space where truth is revealed and healing begins. Words often fail to reach the places where wounds reside, yet silence has the ability to penetrate those depths, to transform pain into wisdom, chaos into order, and despair into hope. Think of Elijah on Mount Horeb, seeking the voice of God. A mighty wind tore through the mountains, but the Lord was not in the wind. An earthquake followed, and then a fire, but the Lord was not in them either. After the fire came a gentle whisper, a still small voice. It was in the silence that Elijah found God, and it is in the silence that we too find clarity and peace. This biblical account is not a relic of the past. It is a timeless reminder that the most profound truths are often revealed not in noise, but in quiet. Silence is a refuge, but it is also a challenge. To sit in silence is to confront yourself, the doubts you suppress, the pain you avoid, the questions you cannot answer. Many fear silence because it strips away distractions and forces them to face the unfiltered reality of their thoughts and emotions. This confrontation is essential. Growth does not occur in the comfort of avoidance, but in the courage to face the uncomfortable truths within. Healing through silence is not passive. It is active and intentional. It requires you to listen, not just to the world around you, but to the voice within. In a world saturated with noise, this listening is a discipline. It demands that you step away from the constant stream of opinions, advice, and demands, and seek the stillness where your own voice can emerge. This is not selfishness. It is self-discovery. It is recognizing that you cannot pour into others from an empty vessel, and silence is the well from which you refill. There is a sacredness to silence that must not be underestimated. When words are spoken in haste, they often wound rather than heal. Proverbs teaches us that a yea, gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Silence, too, can be a gentle answer, a space where anger dissipates, where understanding grows, and where reconciliation becomes possible. It is not avoidance, it is wisdom, knowing when words will fail and allowing space for the heart to mend. Consider the relationships that have been strained, the arguments that have left scars, the misunderstandings that have driven wedges between loved ones. Often it is not more words that are needed, but fewer. Silence creates the space for empathy, for reflection, for grace. It allows emotions to settle and perspective to emerge. It is in these silent moments that healing becomes possible, not through force, but through patience and presence. Silence also teaches us humility. It reminds us that not every problem has an immediate solution, not every question demands an immediate answer, and not every wound can be healed with words. Silence is an act of surrender, a recognition that some battles are won not through noise, but through stillness. It is an acknowledgement that we are not in control of everything, and that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is to wait. But let us be clear, silence is not the absence of action. It is a form of action, a deliberate choice to create space for what truly matters. It is a rejection of the chaos and a commitment to clarity. It is a discipline that requires strength, for it is far easier to fill the void with meaningless noise than to sit in the discomfort of stillness. Yet, it is in this discomfort that we are refined. Healing through silence is a journey, not a destination. It is a practice that must be cultivated daily, a choice to step back, to breathe, to listen. And in doing so, you will find that silence is not emptiness. It is fullness. It is not weakness. It is strength. And it is not the end. It is the beginning of something profound, a deeper understanding of yourself, a greater connection to others, and a renewed sense of purpose and peace. Growth does not emerge from ease and comfort. It is born in the crucible of discomfort, in the spaces where challenge meets perseverance. Discomfort is not your enemy. It is your greatest ally, an unyielding teacher that strips away illusions, tests your resilience, and refines your character. To embrace discomfort is to step into the arena of transformation where the seeds of potential are planted, watered by effort, and grown under the weight of adversity. The Apostle Paul writes in his letter to the Romans, "We also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope. Hope, this is not a call to masochism, but to understanding. And suffering in all its forms is not a meaningless punishment. It is a process. It is the fire that purifies gold, the chisel that shapes marble, the storm that strengthens the roots of a tree. Without discomfort, there is no growth. Without struggle, there is no strength. Think of the butterfly emerging from its cocoon. The struggle it faces to break free is not an obstacle. It is a necessity. If the process is interrupted, if the butterfly is assisted, its wings will not develop the strength needed to fly. So too are we shaped by our struggles. To shy away from discomfort is to deny yourself the strength that comes from enduring it. It is to choose stagnation over growth, safety over transformation, mediocrity over greatness. But this is not an easy path. To embrace discomfort requires a shift in perspective, a willingness to see challenges not as threats, but as opportunities. It requires a mindset that says, this is hard, but it is making me stronger. This is painful, but it is teaching me something I need to learn. And it requires faith, a deep, unshakable faith that the process of growth, though difficult, is leading you towards something greater. Consider the story of Joseph in Genesis. Sold into slavery by his own brothers, falsely accused and imprisoned, he faced hardship after hardship. Yet through each trial, Joseph grew. He honed his skills, deepened his faith, and strengthened his character. By the time he rose to power in Egypt, he was not only prepared for the role, but transformed by the journey that brought him there. His discomfort was not the end of his story. It was the beginning of his greatness. In your own life, the challenges you face are not random. They are opportunities for growth tailor-made to shape you into the person you are meant to become. The job you lost, the relationship that ended, the dream that didn't come to fruition, all of these are invitations to rise above, to adapt, to grow. They are the trials that test your resolve and reveal your true strength, but growth through discomfort does not happen automatically. It requires intentionality. It requires that you lean into the discomfort, face it head on, and ask, what is this here to teach me? How can I grow through this? It requires that you take responsibility for your own growth, refusing to blame others or wallow in self-pity. And it requires discipline, the discipline to keep going when every fiber of your being wants to give up. This is the paradox of discomfort. Though it is painful, it is also transformative. It strips away what is unnecessary, burns away what is weak, and leaves behind what is strong, true, and enduring. Like the potter shaping clay, discomfort molds you into something beautiful, something purposeful, but only if you allow it to, if you allow it to. Only if you embrace it, learn from it, and use it as fuel for your growth. The path of growth is not for the faint of heart. It is not easy, and it is not quick, but it is worth it. For on the other side of discomfort lies a strength you never knew you had, a resilience you never thought possible, and a life richer and more meaningful than you could have imagined. Embrace the discomfort. Let it shape you. Let it transform you. And in doing so, you will discover that you are capable of far more than you ever dreamed. Forgiveness is not a gift you give to others. It is a liberation you grant yourself. To forgive is not to condone, to forget, or to erase the wrongs that have been done to you. It is to release the grip those wrongs have on your heart, to untether yourself from the bitterness that chains you to the past. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is the ultimate act of strength. It is the decision to rise above, to reclaim your peace, and to live unburdened by resentment. The call to forgive is woven deeply into the fabric of our humanity. Christ himself, hanging on the cross in excruciating agony, looked upon those who had condemned him and uttered words that still echo through the centuries. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. This is not a story of naivety or denial. It is a story of transcendence. It is a declaration that even in the face of the greatest betrayal, we have the power to choose love over hate, freedom over bondage, grace over vengeance. Yet forgiveness is not instinctive. It is counterintuitive. When we are wronged, our natural inclination is to seek justice, to cling to our pain as proof that what was done to us was real and unjust. We convince ourselves that holding on to anger is a form of protection, a shield that prevents further harm. But in truth, anger and bitterness are not shields. They are prisons. They consume us from within, poisoning our hearts and minds, leaving us trapped in a cycle of pain. To forgive is to acknowledge the pain, but refuse to let it define you. It is to say, yes, this hurt. Yes, it was unfair. Yes, it was unfair. But I will not allow this pain to dictate my life. Forgiveness is not about denying the reality of the offense. It is about reclaiming your power. It is about choosing healing over hurt, peace over turmoil, freedom over captivity. But forgiveness is not a single act. It is a process. It begins with the decision to forgive, but it often requires repeated effort, especially when the wound runs deep. Consider Peter's question to Jesus. Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times? Up to 7 times? And Jesus replied, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. This is not a numerical limit, but an illustration of the boundless nature of forgiveness. It is a reminder that forgiveness is an ongoing journey, a discipline that must be practiced daily. The process of forgiveness also demands humility. It requires you to confront your own imperfections, to recognize that you too have been the cause of pain in others' lives. This is not to diminish the wrongs done to you, but to foster empathy. When you understand your own capacity for error, it becomes easier to extend grace to those who have wronged you. Forgiveness is transformative. It changes you at the deepest level. It allows you to release the weight you have carried, to breathe deeply, to live fully. It creates space for joy, for love, for connection. It does not erase the scars, but it turns them into reminders of your strength, your resilience, your ability to overcome. But let us not mistake forgiveness for reconciliation. They are not the same. Forgiveness is something you do within yourself. It does not require the other person's participation. Reconciliation, on the other hand, is a mutual act, one that requires trust and effort from both parties. You can forgive someone and still choose to set boundaries to protect yourself, to walk away. Forgiveness is not about letting someone back into your life. It is about setting yourself free, ultimately. Forgiveness is a gift that reflects the divine ways. It is a reflection of the grace we have been given, an act of faith that says, I will not let this pain define me. To forgive is to reclaim your power, to choose freedom over bondage, to step into the fullness of who you were created to be. And in doing so, you will discover that forgiveness is not just an act of release. It is an act of redemption. It transforms not only the pain of the past, but the possibility of the future, allowing you to move forward with a heart unburdened and a spirit renewed.